So 2025, beginning of the year. And what can we expect from this year? Well, maybe you already know this chart. I'll start with like the economic situation for developers, because I guess we all are developers. Most of us are, I guess. And we've seen better times. I mean, we've been here, right? So that has been like the peak COVID boost. And now we're essentially here. And these are software development job postings. So there have been better times. Trust me, I can also tell, because whilst I'm not looking for a job, obviously I create programming courses, and there have been better times for that too than right now. So I'm affected, you are maybe affected, and yeah, it's not fun. Especially like this year, that's where we've been prior to COVID. It would be nice to at least get back to this, right? Get back to like this, that would be great. And maybe we'll get there in 2025. But obviously, it's still difficult times. We still have like layoffs being announced pretty frequently, though at least for me, it feels like it's slowing down a bit, which would make sense because lots of companies already have laid off many employees, developers. And that also kind of makes sense because obviously like this huge peak here, that huge peak here was also not really natural or healthy. But yeah, maybe we're reaching like the bottom there, and things will pick up from there, especially now also this year where maybe interest rates will go down, and therefore there might be more hiring going on when that happens. We got the Trump administration, of course, which also might help the economy or might not help the economy, especially like the global economy. So yeah, it still is a lot of uncertainty for this year, in my opinion, probably in most people's opinion, I would guess. And there have been more fun times. And of course, we also got like the big lingering topic of AI. But if I take a look at the chat here to kind of catch up with what you're all saying, yeah. Should we focus on more AI development? I'll get to that. I'll get to the AI part. Yeah, I'll get to that. Because obviously AI, that is the other big thing that can be really intimidating, I guess. Because the job market is what it is. It will probably pick up again. We'll not get back to like the peak here, but getting back to like the level we had before COVID, and then from there on slowly growing. That is what you could expect because, well, that's just how it works, I guess. And there is no reason to assume that all of a sudden we don't need any more developers ever, except if you think that AI will replace developers. And of course, here we got people like the Salesforce CEO who said in December, actually already, that Salesforce will hire no more software engineers in 2025. That's interesting. And I guess we have similar statements by other people as well, like Mark Zuckerberg. But I'll get back to Mark in a second, because if we stick to Salesforce, it's always important to kind of treat statements like this, well, to be skeptical of statements like this. Because for Salesforce, if we go to their careers page, so that is the Salesforce career page, and you search for software engineer, you find 726 matching jobs. And if you scroll through them, these are really software engineering jobs. And now you could say, well, these are old postings. They're not for this year. But actually, of course they're for this year, otherwise they wouldn't be open, and they're also not old. If I like pick this one here in Canada, that is a posting from January 13th. So it's pretty new. So why would Salesforce say something like this and then do something like this where they still hire people? Well, of course, you could say maybe the HR part of Salesforce doesn't know about this new strategy yet. That would be a kind of a bad sign. But of course, it's also pretty likely that what people, especially CEOs, say is not necessarily what they do. Because you have to keep in mind, they have to impress investors, they have to maybe also gain leverage for negotiating with new hires or existing employees. So there are reasons to say something. I mean, Salesforce wants to sell their AI products to their customers. Of course, they have to make it very clear that AI is powerful and that they're using it internally and that it makes them more productive, because how would you sell AI stuff to customers otherwise? But you have to really not believe it or not take it in the very literal way, I guess. And it's the same, for example, for Mark Zuckerberg. Recently, he said that this year they will again lay off 5% of their workforce, and they only want to keep like the high achievers, the very good ones. And that kind of makes sense because he also said a couple of days ago, I think, that actually this year at Meta, AI will be able to replace mid-level software engineers. So again, saying something like this makes a lot of sense if you want to prove that you are a very capable player in the AI field, if you want to be able to pressure your employees to some extent. It makes sense to say something like this. If they'll do it is a totally different question. We should also keep in mind that Zuckerberg is the person who even renamed the entire company after a technology, the metaverse. Do you still know it? Does anyone care? I guess not. So we have to be careful with things like that. However, of course, I don't mean to say that AI is not there, that it won't have any impact. Of course it has an impact. I'm also using AI, I'm using GitHub Copilot, all these other tools on a daily basis, because it can make you more productive and it can write code. Of course it can. And we see more products, we see new AI models. I'm just not convinced that we'll see the kind of development, the kind of evolution in AI models that some people predict that will really make it super intelligent. And B, even if AI is capable of generating vast amounts of code, at this point, and maybe also in the foreseeable future, we're talking about blocks of code that are not necessarily super connected, and you still need people that understand and potentially fix that code. And when it comes to more complex applications or anything that's not super trivial, you can also doubt whether AI can really replace a software engineer, a developer there. Also because, of course, being a developer is not just about writing code. It's also about communication, about understanding requirements, planning the application, and a bunch of other stuff, working together with other teams and people, aligning interests. It's so much more. So there are a lot of moving parts here. What is definitely the case, though, is that these tools exist and that, in my opinion, you should really use them and see if you can become more efficient with them. But yeah, we'll of course all see how that will work out. But you always have to keep in mind that all these people that tell you that the AI revolution is already on its way and that software engineers will be out of jobs in 6 months, these are also the people, to a large extent at least, that told you the same thing 1.5 years ago. And now we had like 12 months or 18 months since we lost our jobs, and we did not necessarily do that, and definitely not because of AI. So that's kind of my take on that. And it's a difficult topic because you quickly end up being that person that does not believe in AI at all. And that's not the thing. It's not that simple. It's not that super weapon necessarily that some people make it, at least in my opinion. But yeah, let me see what you all wrote. Talking and reading is really hard. So let me catch up here. Do I think that the current developer job market will result in less people taking up the career path and in result demand for developers going back? So it's definitely possible that people are not becoming developers right now because of the current job market, also because of AI maybe, which ironically is an even better reason to consider pursuing this job market or this career, because if things turn out to be good for developers in 5 years, being one of the few people that are still in it might not be the worst position. And in general, by the way, that's really important to me. When it comes to like what you should do in the current situation, of course you can quit. You can like go to a farm and do stuff there. You can of course switch industry. If you decide to stay in the development space, which is a good idea in my opinion, but if you decide to do that, then it really is a good idea, or what you should do in my opinion is go deep. And that was a good idea before that whole AI stuff too. You don't just want to stay on a shallow level with a very shallow skill set. It's not enough to be able to like build like a React to-do app and a simple Node Express backend, even though that is what we'll do later. But it's a bit more than that. But it's not enough to stay on that level forever. You want to go deeper. You want to practice building more complex apps, but you also, if you're in web development, you want to learn a lot about how the web really works behind the scenes, about protocols, like understanding the HTTP protocol. You want to learn about authentication, understanding how session-based authentication really works, for example. So diving deeper, learning about things like Git, Docker, server management, all these things, that's definitely a good idea, because I think there will be a gap between all these people that are only using AI and that only got very basic coding skills, and then the people that actually invest in their knowledge and that are better and that have a broader knowledge. There will be a gap between these two areas. And if you're on that side with the deeper knowledge, that's a pretty good place to be, because bridging that gap is not going to get simpler the more you rely on AI. That's, by the way, also something I personally noticed. I do turn off GitHub Copilot from time to time, because if you rely too much on it, you actually, it feels like you're getting dumber, because you're just waiting for that auto completion, and then you just check whether the code that was generated is the code you wanted, even though I knew what I wanted. And sometimes I would have even been quicker to just write the code, but I instead wait for the code to be generated. So that's maybe also not something you want to do. So use these tools, but use them with care and build a deep knowledge. That does not sound like a bad idea, in my opinion. Would you say it's good to use AI to check your knowledge on unexplored territory? Like, goody, but you're asking good questions and not just plug and chugging it. Yeah, exactly. So you wanna use AI, definitely, also for things you don't know anything about it, but then don't just blindly accept the results AI spits at you. By the way, there is a really good video on YouTube. It was released recently, I think yesterday. I don't know his name. Is that the name? Let's see. Yeah, that's him. So the AI risks no one is talking about video. That's a really great video, which I do recommend watching, because he also talks about the problem that if you accept everything AI throws at you, you ultimately, of course, end up with code bases that might be pretty broken and so on. But we also end up in a situation where the AI might actually be trained in the future on all the code it generated in the past, and therefore it might actually become dumber and dumber. And he brings up many other very valid concerns there too. So that's a good thing. yeah, so being an AI aware developer, I guess, is a good idea, and embracing it, using it, um, yeah, and not being afraid of it. I know there are a lot of voices that make it seem as if everything's about to change in 1 year. And I don't believe that, even by the way, if AI would be changing everything in 1 year, which I'm certain it won't, but if it would, then still, industries, the job market would not catch up that quickly. Think of the internet. Like when the internet started and how long it took for it really to change everything. And up to this day, I can tell, I'm in Germany, there are places where you can't do things online. You have to print out stuff and so on. So even if it were that revolutionary, it would not change things overnight. And I'm not even convinced it is that revolutionary. So yeah, learning how to write code or how to code, becoming a developer, still a good idea, but build a deep knowledge, deep expertise, and use AI as an assistant, but don't rely on it, and also turn it off or don't use it from time to time. I guess that's what I would say here. AI makes a lot of mistakes and often lacks a deep understanding of what's going on. Without fundamental knowledge of what's going on in your code, you can't write good code. Exactly. And by the way, that's also funny. I see a lot of people on X, for example, that build stuff with help of AI, of course, and they in the end tell you how powerful AI is. And that is, of course, true to some extent. But they're only able to build that stuff because they also know how to code. If you don't know how to code at all, if you don't know anything about writing code, about developing applications, no matter which kind of applications, by the way, if you don't know anything about that, then you will have a hard time building applications just with AI, because as soon as things break, you're lost. And even if they don't break, by the way, you might have serious security flaws and issues in your code, but that's a totally different thing. It's also worth noting, by the way, that of course, when it comes to building websites with AI, it seems as if there's only React, only Tailwind, and that's it. Yeah. That's also not necessarily the world we live in. So, yeah, that's enough of for AI. I guess that's my 2 cents on that. I hope the job market gets better, the economic situation gets better this year. AI will see where it takes us. And besides that, there's actually a lot to be excited of, I guess, for this year. Because if we look like at the raw technologies, Angular, React, Node, Laravel, whatever you're using, there's so much exciting development going on there, and in such a stable way. I recall 5 or 6 years ago, we had a new JavaScript framework almost every day. Now we have a very stable set of libraries and frameworks: React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, Solid.js maybe. But those libraries do see a lot of active development, a lot of interesting innovation, especially Angular, which is super backwards compatible, but had lots of great things being added to the framework over the last 2 years. So that's really a great place to be in. It's so much fun. I think to be in that area, so much exciting technologies. And then again, with AI, you can be a bit more effective. You can also build pretty interesting applications where you can incorporate LLMs to summarize content and build applications based on all those AI capabilities, or build an application that automatically generates captions for videos. It's never been easier to leverage all these technologies, and it's really a great industry to be in if we leave aside the current job market situation, which of course is a relevant thing. I am aware of that. But from a technology perspective, it's maybe never been better, in my opinion. So that's pretty good. Okay, let me see. I'm currently learning JavaScript on a deeper level, and I'm just wondering if it if it's still worth doing so and progressing later with frameworks, Node, React. Is that a good idea? Yeah, definitely a good idea. By the way, I know there are different opinions on that. There are people that tell you that you should learn vanilla JavaScript first and then dive into frameworks and libraries. I personally don't think that this is the best way of learning or of getting into web development. I think it's a good idea to start with HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript, but then pretty quickly you might consider switching to something like Vue. Vue because it's closer to vanilla HTML and JavaScript, at least if you're sticking to the options API there. And then as you learn more about these frameworks, you also automatically learn a bit more about JavaScript. And it's simply a bit more fun if you're able to build slightly more powerful applications than if you build everything with just vanilla JavaScript. But that's just my opinion on that. Of course, there are different approaches. What's your opinion about those who are against AI because they say it's not helpful to the environment and climate? Yeah, that's a totally different thing. I mean, I was just talking about the implications AI has on us developers and so on, but if you look at it from an environmental or ethical angle, that's a totally different thing. I mean, AI is horrible there. All these models that were trained on copyrighted data, one can assume. And from an environment perspective, I don't know the numbers by heart, but that's really, I guess you can fly the entire year around the globe and it won't be as problematic as training a model. So yeah. AI isn't a threat. It can only reach a certain point of code quality. It is learned on bad and good code, but better code, the higher the chance of becoming private. That's why I will only generate code slightly below an average quality code. Yeah, it's a valid point. And that's also, by the way, what I mentioned before. There also is like a possible future where AI generates a lot of code and then future models get trained on that past AI code. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's basically getting trained on itself, and that might not help the results it produces. So yeah, definitely a valid point. Oh God, there are so many questions in the comments. Probably won't be able to pick up on all of them. Will I leave a record? Will I record this session? Yeah, I do. So I will upload the recording of this live stream on YouTube. That's the plan, at least, if OBS does not mess with me. Do I have any course where I show how to build an entire video chat app without an API? I do not. We will build not a video chat app, to be honest, but we will build an app today in this stream where we use AI image generation. That should be fun. There are many people creating so-called software as a service apps using different stacks. Do you recommend something specific which could offer a short learning curve, and is it easy to integrate? And it is easy to integrate further modules. So you mean, I guess that means for practicing. I guess if you want to build a project for practicing, it's always a good idea to simply copy any website, any web application out there, and just build your own simplified clone. Definitely get rid of certain features, make it simple, but building a simplified clone will give you a lot of challenges. Even if it is a very simple clone, there will still be enough challenges. And that is what I did when I got into web development and development in general. And what I still do if I learn a new language, a new framework, I really like building a very simple online shop, a very simple chat app, now also with large language models, building an AI wrapper. That can all be great practice projects. And if you're building like a real software as a service company, cloning can still be a valid strategy. Like pick a popular service and build a better one, or build one that does one thing better. Obviously that can work. So many people here who took my courses. That's amazing. Thank you all so much. By the way, shameless plug. I wrote a book. I hope you can see it. I wrote a book about React key concepts, and the second edition of this book is out now. There should be a link below this stream. You can also find it on Amazon if you search for React Key Concepts. And if you want to learn all about React, and if you want to do that with a book from time to time, this is for you. I had a lot of fun writing it. I hope you will like it. It's entirely updated for React 19. So yeah, just wanted to mention this too. By the way, books. I do actually indeed learn a lot from books too, because there are so many online resources and courses, documentation, which is all great and which I also use. But picking up a book from time to time and like getting away from a screen can be really interesting. So yeah, I'm not just saying it. I do have like a large amount of books at home. So I can recommend that if you want to get away from a screen from time to time. What else? I'm missing your podcast. When are new episodes coming? Yeah, I mentioned before. I don't know. I like creating videos. The podcast, I will maybe just use like the audio channel of my videos and still release that as a podcast. But doing just a podcast, it felt a bit weird if I don't have anything to back it up on screen. So thank you all so much for the amazing feedback. That really means a lot to me. Okay, I have to skip some questions here. There are just too many, but I hope I'll do more streams in the future. Definitely the plan. And there might also be just an Ask Me Anything stream where I can like go into all these details. By the way, that would also be interesting. Please let me know what you would like to see in future streams, videos, what you do not like about this one, what I could improve. As I said before, it's the first time I'm doing this on Twitch. It's the second stream ever I'm doing. The last one was 5 years ago. So I'm probably doing everything wrong. So just let me know. Okay. What courses do you recommend on learning AI? So I do have 2 courses. One general LLM course where I teach about ChatGPT and how to engineer prompts and so on. It's a bit dated, to be honest, but it still has all the crucial basics. And I also have like a course specifically for using AI tools as a developer. That's a pretty new course. You find them all on academind.com/courses. So these are courses I obviously recommend. But other than that, it's really also just about trying things out, because there's so much development there. We get a new model almost every day. We got a new tool for developers almost every day. I mean, there has been like Copilot workspaces announced yesterday or so, which is essentially the Devon clone by GitHub, by Microsoft. So really just playing around with these tools. And that, by the way, is a tool I also haven't used yet, but I will try it out in the future, maybe in a stream. That's something I recommend. So the content in my Git course needs to be updated. So I think Git should be a topic that does not need frequent updating, but in general, when it comes to updating courses, I'm doing my very best. It's just not possible to update all courses all the time. And especially like content like Git, which does not change all the time, has a lower priority. But yeah, I'm doing my best to, I try my best, let's say it like this, to update courses, to keep them updated. And keep up with the trends and so on. But it's also worth mentioning regarding course updates that updates are not always good. Udemy, where I have most of my courses, obviously, actually has a lot of business customers where I have had the experience, or it has happened, that I actually got bad feedback or problems because I updated a course where people actually wanted the older version. So that's it's really hard to balance everything, but I'm trying my best. I can tell you that. If you can rebase, you're better than 90%. If you can rebase with Git, you're better than 90% of developers. That is true. Hey Max, could you please tell me? I have about 5 years of experience with Vue, Next, but I'm currently trying to find a job in Germany, and due to high competition, I haven't been able to find anything. Would it make sense to start learning React next? So yeah, it's really sad to hear this. Vue Next, obviously, really amazing, but when it comes to finding a job in the current situation where there aren't a lot of jobs, I'm afraid going for React, Next, Angular, which is also pretty popular in the enterprise area, might be a good strategy. Also because if you already know Vue, learning React or any other library or framework shouldn't be too difficult. So that could be a smart move then, yeah. Okay. In the future, will you jump to any low-level programming? Absolutely. Not to assembly language, but I actually am considering learning C this year. Fun fact, I actually started with C when I was 12 or 13. So whichever language would you use if you're 12 or 13? Of course you use C, right? So yeah, I because it was for Christmas or my birthday back then, where I wanted something so that I could learn to code. And my dad or my parents, they gave me this C book, and that's how I started. And then shortly after, web development, which is a bit more beginner friendly. But yeah, getting back into C, also things like Rust or Sig, that's definitely something I'd love to do this year. It's always so many ideas. Also got many projects I'd like to build, actual real projects, products, software as a services, stuff like that. It's just so many ideas. I'll have to see what I can actually do. But yeah, it is something I would love to do. What do you think of Svelte? Svelte is amazing. I'm not using it that much because, well, I'm not building 10 projects every day, but Svelte is amazing. I got into it in 2019. I've liked it since, and I still do. Would it be good to build an AI project that summarizes Twitch questions based on similar questions made by users? That would be amazing. I guess in general. Once I'm a bit more into Twitch, I have to see what I can automate there and stuff, because that sounds pretty good. I became a legend in your workplace. Oh, you can become a legend in a workplace simply by knowing the basics of Git. That might be true. That's an interesting one. How would you suggest to build authentication and authorization logic? Would you suggest to use services as Clerk, Lucia? I would recommend checking out BetterAuth. So that is BetterAuth, which is a package I'm currently learning. I haven't used it too much, just played around a bit with it because it looks really amazing. It has a pretty simple setup process and comes with everything, as it seems. Email, password authentication, all these social providers, two-factor authentication, passkeys. So I would probably recommend that. I just can't yet because I haven't really used it, but that might be interesting. Just want to take this opportunity to say thanks for all your hard work. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here, for being part of these courses, for liking what I do. It really means a lot to me. I have taken a lot of courses from various sources. You are hands down the best instructors. Wow, you're making. I'm getting red here. It's really nice. Thank you all so much. You're amazing. Okay. Okay, maybe just one or two other questions, and then we'll get into building this React app. And obviously, I'll still answer questions whilst we're doing this. How do you think AI will affect mobile app development? I guess in the same way it's affecting all development, not replacing developers anytime soon, in my opinion, as I mentioned before, but definitely a tool you should use to get more productive, to use GitHub Copilot or use something like Copilot edits for generating code. Yeah, definitely. It's as relevant for mobile app development as for any other kind of development, I would guess. Okay. Thoughts on Elixir, Nest.js? So I have not used Elixir at all, so I got absolutely no thoughts on that. Sorry. Nest.js I have used. I actually was close to creating a course on it back in 2019. I then just did not have the time for it, unfortunately, and I haven't used it since. I used it a lot back in 2019. I like it a lot. It's essentially like Angular for the backend, and that can be an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on how you like Angular. What do you think about the future of Golang? Golang is an amazing programming language. I released a course on it last year. I am using it for some of my side projects. I'm playing around with it from time to time. I by the way, I do this with pretty much all these technologies I have in my courses, and a lot of languages and libraries I do not have courses on, just because I like it. I will regularly just pick a language or a library and build something just because I enjoy writing code and learning new stuff. And Golang has been a lot of fun. It's a great language because it's actually pretty simple once you got the hang of it. It's not that hard to learn, in my opinion. Hard to master, that's probably true for everything, but you can build pretty exciting stuff with it quickly. It gives you great performance. I liked Golang a lot, and I think therefore it has a good future. It's definitely an established language with its advantages. How do I find the time to learn new stuff? That's an interesting one. Finding time is hard. I mean, the one advantage I have is that a large chunk of my day is actually creating content, creating courses. It has shifted a bit. I'm also working on more internal projects or side project stuff like that. But yeah, large chunk of my day is preparing content, and a large chunk of that time is of course also learning stuff or getting better at stuff, because obviously I only teach what I know and what I know well. But I will say I have always learned programming, learned new languages, libraries, even before I started creating courses. Because for me, that might be a bit weird, but I actually find it relaxing to sit down for 1.5 or 2 hours in the evening and just like go through a tutorial, go through documentation, start building a simple demo project, do stuff like that. Basically squeezing it into those short pauses in the day where I have some time. I just enjoy that. So that might not work for everyone, but that's how I find the time for that. Will you dive into project architecture and system design for web development by any chance? I would love to, in general. I definitely want to go deeper this year, learn some low-level programming languages, and also more into CI/CD, DevOps, stuff like that, and also possibly like system design and all that fun stuff. It's just a matter of time.